But remember when we were first together and we would go on fun dates and, we could just decide on a date for 7:00 tonight at 3:00 in the afternoon.
Those were the days.
Those days ain't coming back, sister.
Not for a while.
And this is something that we hear from married couples constantly. We know we should be dating. We don't want to lose connection. But what the heck does dating look like in the various areas of married life, right? Because dating before marriage and dating after marriage, regardless of where you're at with kids, does not look the same.
Yep. Let's get into that.
Before we jump into today's show, I wanted to ask you to check out our website, brand new website, marriagebydesignpodcast.com. That's marriagebydesignpodcast.com. All of our episodes are available there on that website. Love to have you pop over there, follow us there, and check it out.
If you have a topic that you're wanting more information on or you have questions about, you can search on our website by topic, which is a really great feature.
That's right. And more than anything, guys, please share this with someone that would find it meaningful for them. Without any more delay, let's get to the show. Hey, everybody. I'm Nathan Warnock.
I'm Andrea Warnock, and you've joined the Marriage by Design podcast. This is a time where we get to talk to you about God's design for marriage, what the Bible has to say about that, and how we live that out practically.
There's just a reality of a relationship. There has to be connection there in order for a relationship to thrive, right? I mean, that seems super foundational. And a lot of times we understand that with regards to building relationship with our kids. We understand that with regards to building relationship with our friends, right? We start in a new church and we're like, well, we need to meet people and build relationship. And yet, for some reason, when we go from being a dating and or engaged couple to being a married couple, we somehow just think, well, we live together. So
right, we're around each other all the time, so isn't that enough?
Date. Right, and man, it really wrecks your relationship. It one of the most sad things Andrea and I see in marriage is the marriage that has become about the practical only. Mm-hmm. Right, it's just we work really well together. We do things together. He does this part. She does this part. He does this with the kids. She does this with the kids. He does this in the house. She does this in the house, out of the house, out of the house. And it becomes just about doing things efficiently within our home. And look at, Andrew and I are all about doing things efficiently within our home. We got a big home. But the other side of that is, right, lots of people in the home.
If you have tips for that, let me know.
Right. Right. But the other side of that is, and Andrea and I have not done this right in our marriage throughout. Like, we haven't always done this right in our marriage for sure. But the danger of the practical marriage is that you lose the emotional connection with your spouse. And that emotional connection, that intimacy, go back and listen to our intimacy table episodes. That intimacy in marriage is absolutely critical if you want to have a thriving, God-honoring marriage.
Yeah, I don't know, this was probably 10 years ago or coming up on 10 years ago. We met a couple at Disney. We were sitting at one of those, what are they called? Japanese steakhouse. Stop it. Japanese steakhouse restaurants.
Ooh.
And you get put at a table with other people you don't know. And it was at the end of the meal, and somehow we had got talking to them about why they were at Disney and all that. And they said, well, we launched our last kid from our house and we get along and all that, but we realized, man, we don't know each other. And we kind of like looked across the table at each other at dinners and we're like, I don't really know who you are anymore. And I don't know who we are without kids. And
this couple said that.
This couple, yes.
Yeah, right.
And so they were launching into, Disney was something that they were doing together to give themselves time and some fun. And they had a plan, for how they were going to get to know each other again. But that has
so great.
Always, I think that was such a God thing that we heard that, because that's always stuck out to us as they got along. Like, They
Yeah.
said life was good. We
Right.
got along. We
Right.
enjoy each other, but we didn't know each other.
Right.
And so now, they've spent how many years raising kids, and now they have to put a lot of time and effort into who is this person that I'm living my everyday life with. And so that has stuck out to us as how do we avoid that,
You said something there that's really foundational from a biblical standpoint, and that was knowing each other.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, one of the things that God designed us to be as humans is to be known. When we go back and look in Genesis, it says when Adam and Eve were in the garden before sin, they were naked and unashamed.
Right.
They were truly known by each other and by their creator. And now the world's fallen and shame has entered in, embarrassment, sort of a hesitancy to truly want to be known by others. And oftentimes that plays itself out even in our home.
Yep. Yeah, it's not enough to just, hey, this works or
Right.
we get along. That's not enough.
Right. So what we're launching today is really a 2-part series that we're going to go over this week and next week. This week, we're going to be talking about just how do we date through the ages, right? After marriage, what does dating look like in all these different stages? We're going to start with kind of the early years, newlywed and young marrieds. Andrew and my story, if you know our testimony, would be that we really screwed this up. And man, I think both of us have said even recently, we really wish we could go back in a sense and do that differently, because now we've got kids hanging everywhere. And man, it would have been great to go back and take that more seriously. So if
They're
you're
not hanging, they're hanging around.
right,
everywhere.
yes, thank you. Ooh, that got dark. So if you are dating, engaged, or newly married, I really want you to listen up to that part. The next part is the middle years, right? Parenting a growing family. And families grow sometimes with one child, sometimes with 6, sometimes with more. This isn't specific to number of children. It's just how do we date when we're also raising a family? It's a difficult time. Difficult enough, in fact, that we're actually going to just microscope in on that next week and talk about not just dating while raising a family, but dating in the different stages, young kids, kind of middle-aged kids and older kids, and the purpose of that and how we want to look at that. Then the last thing we're going to talk about today is the empty nest and beyond. Now, Andrew and I, as we just mentioned, are not empty nesters, will not be empty nesters for quite some time, but we have had the opportunity to connect with couples that are Christian couples that are doing this well, that are empty nesters, as well as a chance to counsel some couples that weren't doing this well, and we're struggling to try and figure out what do we do next. And I've had some real God encounters like that one you mentioned in Disney and Epcot that really got us
Yes, we need to
thinking
go back
about
to
what does this
Disney.
look like. No
See
question.
if there's any more nuggets that God has for
Always
us
need
there.
to go back to Disney. All right, so that's what we're going to do today. So as we launch in, I want to just remind you as a foundation, our relationship with each other in marriage is designed to be a reflection of Christ's relationship with us as his people. Christ never stops pursuing us. He never stops pursuing deeper, more intimate relationship with us. He never stops wooing us. He never stops drawing us into deeper understanding of who he is, deeper faith in him. That relationship is always in growth mode from his standpoint.
Yeah, and including times where there's things brought up that are really difficult that maybe damage the relationship and that take a lot of work. He still never stops pursuing
That's right.
and wanting more from us and
That's
a
right.
deeper relationship with us,
That's
which
right.
should be our marriage relationships too.
That's the point, right? And that's why we're talking about this. Is it's not okay to just sort of mail it in marriage because I'm busy doing other things. It's not a reflection of our relationship with Christ, and it's not healthy in our marriage. So that's kind of the underlying scriptural foundation. Go to Ephesians 5 to take a look at that, as well as Genesis 2, when God creates and shows us the design for marriage. So let's talk then first about the early years, right? The newlyweds and the young marrieds. So this stage in our marriage is characterized by what kind of emotions typically, babe, would you say for newly married?
There's usually excitement and there's newness and really there's a lot of wanting to know your spouse, wanting to be known still to happen typically for most people. And so there's still some newness that's really kind of hiding being known. I don't think that oftentimes we do this on purpose, but we're kind of, when we date somebody, and probably when we're newly married, we're sort of putting on a front a little bit. And so
At least that's the temptation.
yeah, the
Right.
temptation is, I think we're just putting our best foot forward.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm
'Cause
not
you want
saying
this
like
person to
you're
marry you.
trying to put on a front, but you're putting your best foot forward. And
Sure.
I'll tell you, 20 years into marriage, I'm not putting my best foot forward all the time. It's true.
Wow.
The same way that
Getting
I
real
did.
here.
You know what that's like, though. The same way
No,
that
I
I
always
did
put
when we
my
were
best foot
dating
forward.
and first married and all that. So there's a newness and a not really totally knowing the other person, and that can be exciting, and some of the butterflies, and there's a lot of changes going on that are really exciting, and just we've got our whole lives ahead of us, and that's how are we going to spend that and dreaming together. So I think
even your not best foot is still appealing to me.
Oh gosh, thank you. That's not true, but thank you.
Yeah, but Andrea hits on something that I think is really important, and that's that newly married piece is the time when you're establishing the foundation of your marriage.
Right.
And how that ties into what you're saying is, I think there are a lot of couples from our experience that have a faulty foundation because they never moved past that putting my best foot forward to being real.
Right.
And so they never built an environment in their home where it truly reflected the vows of no matter what, I'm committed to you.
Yeah, and I think that newly married stage can be a little tenuous too, because there is a lot of excitement and fun and newness and change and all that's great. But it can be like, maybe I'm learning something that I didn't know beforehand, either because the other person kept that secret, which isn't right, or because I just didn't.
Right.
And that may be a little bit nerve-wracking and scary, and then it's like, oh my gosh, I think it's very normal in those early years to have a lot of doubt.
Yep.
And I can tell you that running away from that and not pursuing each other is going to just make that exponentially worse. Yeah,
so you've probably heard, if you're dating or engaged or newly married, you've probably heard well-meaning people say you really need to prioritize romance in those years. I don't really love that terminology. Here's what I would replace it with. You really need to prioritize the culture of your marriage in those early years. What is the culture of your marriage going to be? Is it going to be one where when your spouse doesn't measure up in their actions, you really hit them with it? Maybe you react passive aggressively to them, right? You're setting the culture for your marriage. And so if you're watching this, you're probably going like, right, but what does that have anything to do with dating? Here's what has to do with dating. The biggest way, the only way to make sure that you have a culture that reflects the environment you actually want to have with your spouse is to be intentional about setting that culture. Dating provides the opportunity through which you can have dedicated time to the culture of your marriage. How you date in those early years is going to set the foundation for what the culture of your marriage looks like. Do you is your idea of dating, we're going to sit around the table and flip through our bank statements? Because then the culture of your marriage is going to be the same as the culture of your workplace.
Yeah, I wish we had more time to talk, but dating doesn't need to mean what you probably think that it means. It means pursuing each other intentionally. Maybe that's on the couch doing an escape room type thing. You're home. Sure. But you're pursuing relationship with each other.
Dedicated time.
Right. And then you're, I don't know, whatever. Then maybe you're talking about the financial things. But dating isn't really necessarily having to be like, we're going to plan this thing outside the home. We have to spend money. We should probably get into more of that at a different episode. But dating can be in your home a lot of the times too. Nathan and I have so many dates inside of our own home.
but we're putting away phones. We're not
We're
sitting in
intentional.
front of the TV. We're not. It's
Right.
not a date where we're doing chores.
It's intentional.
Right? I mean,
connecting with each other.
yeah, and it's where we're
Should be
figuring out
doing chores, though.
our culture. No, wrong.
Dating sometimes should be we're doing a chore while we're having a discussion. That would be a great date.
No, wrong.
I'm telling you,
That is
you
not
all
our-
should work
that's
those
not our
in
family culture.
several times a
But
month.
the question is, are you is your dating culture that we go on the types of dates I want to go on?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it that I'm pursuing my spouse by scheduling dates that would be interesting for them?
And for you too. Schedule
Right.
them all.
Right. Are we doing fun things? Are we doing active things? Are we mixing it up and doing all sorts of different things? Are we scheduling them on the calendar, or is dating kind of an afterthought? When you're newlywed, now's the time to
Make
start
it- right.
making it a priority in your life.
Make it just
Because
something
once
that you
you
do.
move to stage 2, the middle years, if you haven't created a flow in your marriage of doing regular dates, that's not a good time to try and start.
It's
Right?
hard.
It can be done. We did it. But it's really difficult to do that.
Yeah.
So start that when you're newly married, and start that building that culture in your life. And also, these dates help you begin to have healthy habits with regards to communication and conflict resolution.
Yep.
Right? They help you to have dedicated time to talk. That's why I'm a big proponent of, particularly at this stage, nothing wrong with dinner and watching TV shows, or dinner and a movie. That's totally cool when you have the time to do that. That's not a date. It can
hanging out,
be
yeah.
a date,
Yeah.
but I don't like those as more than very occasional dates, because they cut out a really important part of dating, and that's talking.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I guarantee you, when you were dating
having
pre-marriage,
fun
you
together.
didn't always go to a movie, because you would never know if you wanted to marry this person or not, because you're watching something together. You're not communicating. You're not learning how to argue. You're not learning how to live with understanding with each other.
And the communication and conflict resolution, if you have a date on the calendar and you're in a fight, go on the date, please. I am one who wants to
Totally.
be like, I'm mad. I don't want to spend any time with you. Put that aside for a little bit, because
word.
your relationship is more important than the conflict that you're dealing with,
good
and you
word,
can
babe.
put it aside.
Yeah.
Put it aside. Go on the date. Enjoy company with each other. Don't talk about the issue for that time, and just enjoy connecting.
Yeah, that's good.
So-
That's a good call. All right, babe. Let's transition then to
The middle years. How are we
years.
in the middle years?
The
We look
growing
like it.
family.
We can see ourselves in a screen, and we look like that's
Babe, you look beautiful.
so hard. I
All
didn't
right.
say I was ugly. I just said we look like we're in the middle years.
You'll always be a 10 to me.
Just
All right. So your parenting and growing a family at the same time, would you say that's generally a positive or a negative when it comes to dating?
Oh yeah, it hampers your dating life for sure.
Right. So here's the problem with the growing family portion. The conflict, just life conflict that needs to be overcome. Typically, you've got a number of competing priorities in that moment, right? Your kids you've had a child, you've had 2 or 3 or 4 children or more, and they're competing for your time.
So are a lot of other things.
Your own body is
I was just
competing
gonna
for
say.
your time because you're tired. Oftentimes,
or you're trying to keep up
if
with
you're
fitness.
right, yeah,
Not me.
that's true. Oftentimes, if you're working, if you and or your spouse are working, these can also oftentimes line up with sort of your peak promotion and earning years. So the temptation is always like, man, I really got to put the time in at work, and that can cut into the dating. The point is, there's all these
There's a lot more
shifting
competing.
priorities, and it is so easy, isn't it, to just deprioritize
Totally.
connecting. Right? We have
And
these date nights on the
especially-
calendar. We'll do it next week. We'll do it the week after
Especially
that.
if you're like, you eat along, we're good.
Right.
Totally.
Right. So the problem here is that dating is the primary means by which we maintain connection with each other. And I'm not talking about connection like, hey, did you know little Johnny got a timeout in school today? Right? Like that's reporting the facts. That's not connection. We've done an episode actually on the deeper levels of communication.
Yeah, go watch
When-
it.
Yeah, go
Listen
watch
to
it. When I talk about connection, I'm talking about those deeper levels of communication that take intentionality, they take time, they take choosing to enter into that. When we let our dates shift away, it begins to allow us to slip into a functional relationship. That's why the question of are we getting along right now really isn't a very good question, because
Well, that's important, but it's not. That doesn't mean that your relationship is good.
right. I guess my point is, if you have an intimate marriage, you're getting along well. If you're getting along well, you don't necessarily have an intimate marriage.
Right.
And what we should be looking for is an intimate marriage, which as a necessary byproduct means we're going to be getting along well.
Right.
That's the question I think we should be asking. How intimate is our marriage? And if you let dating slip away, the answer to that is going to be not very intimate. It's going to be, because you're focusing on all these shifting priorities and not on the dating.
Yeah, and there's shifting emotions too. I mean, you're early married. Your newlywed years there's different feelings about that, emotions about that, than when you're in those middle years. And probably we haven't been to the later years of marriage, but I'm sure there's different emotions and feelings about marriage and each other than there in those years too, because there's no more newness, and there's it's so much more of a comfortability and a beauty in that in your relationship, rather than the butterflies and the excitement and all that kind of thing.
So
there's the romance looks different.
That's exactly.
We're
Here's our 2 points for these middle years of dating. You have to redefine what romance looks like, and you have to be creative. So when we talk about redefining, and this is something we need to probably do an episode again, just in general, talking about redefining romance and marriage, because this definitely bumps into thoughts on sex and those kinds of things that need to be changed when we think about a mature marriage as well. Because romance is so often defined by external forces, right? From the time we're very young, romance is, I get Valentine's Day cards that say hugs and kisses.
You know what?
Love ya. Right? Like it's this
romance,
over the top.
We often think of as the Book of Song of Solomon, right? Where there's so much pursuit of each other and excitement and times away of connecting real deeply. And that's how I think of, Song of Solomon. Go there. It's all romantic. And in these middle years, you're not getting all romance. You're not getting that as much, but you have to be intentional to have those Song of Solomon moments.
Sure.
In your marriage, when you're not newlyweds, well, you have to be probably more intentional about it.
Yeah, and it's important to just talk about, as a couple, about, man, what are our expectations with regards to romance in these years?
Yeah, maybe romance for you is your husband puts the kids to bed while you sit on the couch. Maybe that's romantic. You have to, you just have to talk about these things.
Right. But specifically with regards to dating too, I think it's important to ask those questions. I mean, dating, and this gets into the creative piece of it. I mean, and we'll talk about this more in depth next week, because I really think this divides into, if you have little kids or middle-aged kids or older kids. But again, someone has to lead in the dating. And I always am saying, men, you have to lead in this. Like, it's not fair for you to expect your wife, who's made by the Lord to want to be pursued, to plan all of these things, right? Even if you do the old, like, well, my wife handles our social calendar. Well, not this part of it. Because this part of it is the two of you.
It's not 100%. Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, Andrea plans dates sometimes, which is great. But most of the time, I'm the one that plans that. And this never happens. I don't ever send her a text message and say, what do you want to do next week? Because that feels like you're not really thinking about it, right? And I think that's the part where this redefining romance piece, guys, we have to own being the pursuer here as the man in the marriage. First of all, that's how God does it with his church. He pursues us even when we didn't deserve it. Men, we have to pursue our wives, and that means you have to know her. You have to think about
yeah.
what would she like?
Yeah,
What would we enjoy doing together? And you know what? I kind of can live on the edge with dates. I mean, there's usually, I mean, we have the last couple, 2-3 years have been really good about 2 dates a month. And of those 24 dates a year, I think Andrew would be the first one to say, that, where we go do something and you're like, I mean, it's fine, but I don't know that I would necessarily want to do that again.
Maybe. There's a lot of them that are great, though.
Yeah.
Nathan's really, he's really, and this is romantic. Over the years, he's been so good at really trying to know who he's married to. And sometimes I think he knows me better than I know myself in some circumstances. But then he also is like, with our dates, trying to do things that he knows I'll enjoy. And sometimes they're just things that he's going to enjoy. And he's like, maybe she will, maybe she won't. That's not all of them, though. And some of it's like, some of them I know are like, I have no idea if either of us are going to enjoy these.
Oh, yeah.
But we're at least doing something that's creative, or that we're connecting on, or different, or, hey, maybe we need more time on this date to just talk and really get into deeper communication. So what can we do? So he's so good at, like, we're not doing the same things all the time, and he's trying to be creative, but we're not always spending very much money. I don't know. He's very good at trying to bring in a whole bunch of different things, and some are really exciting and some are a little duller because we just need time to talk, and it's really great.
Yeah, babe, I really appreciate that.
And it's romantic.
We'll give some really practical examples next week. So if you want to know, like, hey, I want to know more about that, please, go to marriagebydesignpodcast.com and subscribe to the podcast, because that'll come out next week. But for this week, for those middle years, we got to redefine what romance looks like. It may not look like the limo pulls up, he's in a suit, it may not look like that. Occasionally, maybe it does. If she loves that dude, plan that as the husband. But it may not always look like that, and that's okay. We can't be holding each other to unrealistic stances of romance, right? Guys, sometimes, honestly, for dates for us, that means we need to change our expectations about post-date activities too. Because sometimes I think we can get in this thing of like, well, I did the work. That comes with strings attached. And the reality of the matter is, even if as newlyweds you were like, man, this is how it worked. We had a date night, we had sex, that's what happened. Now there's kids involved. There's probably lack of sleep involved. At least like for Andrea, there's just boys, 4 of them, with their hands on her all day long.
Boys
from morning till night.
There's a girl in there too.
No,
He's talking about my kids.
I'm being like pointing out the boys specifically, because then there are definitely, just being honest, times when you're like, the last thing you want is any other boy's hands on you. And it took me way too long to be able to give that over to the Lord and just go, you know what? I need to date Andrea because I love her and she's God's daughter and I want her to feel loved. And if it's not a sex thing, it's not a sex thing, and that's okay, because I'm not dating for the sex, I'm dating for the pursuit of my wife. And so I feel like that needs to be said, particularly in this middle year segment. Anything else on the middle years, babe? Nope. Be creative, redefine romance.
We'll have some more. We'll talk more next week.
Sounds good. Okay, then the last one. This one we have yet before us, babe. At any moment we might cross over into this. We're not going to. It's going to be many, many moons. Andrew and I will be very old before we can speak about this from experience. But you know what? Our kids are blessings, and we love them. So the empty nest.
I have a funny story. So yesterday
beyond.
we were at a basketball game for our 14-year-old, and Nathan looked across the gym, and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna look like that when our youngest is 14." It was a
very
dad
older
who looked a lot older, And I was like, "Oh, babe, no, you won't. You'll look way older."
And that's true and sad. But we do have a lot of experience talking with couples who are in this stage, and can definitely, pulling from the Bible and from practical experience, give just a few words for folks that are in this stage. And here's what it is. Oftentimes, there are 3 things at play once you boot your last child out of the house. you have a whole bunch of newfound freedom, and the temptation is to fill that up with all sorts of things that do not include dating your spouse. Because now it schedule's wide open for the first time in maybe 18 years, maybe 38 years, who knows? And you go, oh my gosh,
I have so many things.
we can
I
just
wanna
do whatever
at that
we want to
time.
do. There have been all these things I've been putting off. Let's go. And the last thing that happens is going back to the newlywed phase and going, no, the very first thing we're going to do is make sure that we have regular connection with each other. The second thing is you're in some ways going to probably need to do some rekindling of romance. Right? I mean, the reality of the matter is, no matter how much you redefine it, no matter how creative you are, there is a sense in which dates in those middle years are just oftentimes not as romantic as you might like them to be.
Well, besides that, you have a major life change that just happened, and you two might be a little
Mourning
bit
that.
different people
Yeah,
because
sure.
of that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and trying to figure out who you are now without being you're still a parent, but without actively parenting, and maybe mourning that. Maybe one's mourning, one's really excited.
Yeah.
You have some big life changes that have happened, and you might need to be pursuing being introspective and pursuing the other person and how that's going.
Yeah, one thing
And the changes on that.
That's right. One feedback we've gotten from couples is a lot of times where couples can miss each other in this stage is one or the other had this idea that, well, we were just going to revert right back to newlyweds. Like just how it was our first year of marriage, that's how it's going to be. And the other went, well, I'm not, those days are gone. They're never coming back. We got to figure something else out.
Yep.
And they miss each other, and it really can create some
That's
hurt in
talk to a couple people
expectations.
like that,
Yeah. So sitting down and just saying, okay, what is, like, we're decided we're dating as a couple. We're going to pursue each other. What does that look like? In some ways, that can be really fun because when you were newly married, maybe you didn't have money to have like, hey, once a quarter, we're going to get away from our hometown because you didn't have the finances to do that. Maybe now as a empty nester, maybe you have more finances to be able to go like, look, we're taking one flying trip a year and 3 driving trips a year. Those are going to be part of our dates. Let's have a date where we sit down each year and plan out what those dates are going to look like and have fun dreaming together. Maybe that's how you kind of rekindle that, but you've got to figure out what's romance going to look like now in our empty nest years.
Yeah, and that newfound freedom could be we have all these things we think we might be interested in, and then rekindling romance might be we're pursuing those and seeing what, and maybe we have the money too to do that. We're pursuing some of those and seeing what sticks and what doesn't.
Yep.
And that can be a really romantic thing to dream about that together and pursue that together and find out what you like and what you don't.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And then the last thing I want to point out here is if you're an empty nester dating couple, I want to challenge you to think about the dating legacy you're leaving behind. Right? I mean, if you're a couple of means, maybe when you're out on a date at a restaurant or doing something that costs money, maybe keep an eye out for a younger couple that maybe is there. It looks like they're investing in each other, and pick up the tab, right? And then go over and tell them like, hey, we just wanted to bless you guys because this dating thing you're doing right now is really important. Maybe it's more like, in addition to your dates, the two of you, once or twice a month, you find a younger couple. Maybe it's one of those kids that you've kicked out of the house and their young spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend, and take them out and have some intentional talk about dating.
Yep.
The importance of it. Challenge them. Challenge your son or your son-in-law to own this and pursue your daughter-in-law or your daughter in dating, regardless of the age that looks like. Maybe you can be a blessing by having a date or two a month where you and your spouse are taking your grandkids out on a little grandkid date so that your son or son-in-law and daughter-in-law can go out on a date themselves and help them in those growing family years that are so hard.
One stone, because then you're investing in your grandkids and having intentional time with them. And but another way to leave a legacy, maybe some of your dates are serving together,
right?
in some capacity that you both find important, and you're affecting somewhere else that needs help.
That's right. Occasionally when we talk about things like this, I'll get comments on our videos about, not sure you actually have any credibility on this because you haven't lived it out.
Sure.
And my response to that is usually something like this, and this would be my response in this case. Right. You do, so do it intentionally.
Yeah.
Like if you have credibility in this area, my question to you is, are you living this out in a way that's loud and public?
Yeah.
Like, are you challenging others by the way you date your spouse to date their spouse with that kind of fervor?
Yeah, we're definitely not speaking, and we don't try to say that we are. We're not speaking from experience, but we are speaking from having counseled a lot of couples in that stage of life, and hearing from a lot of couples that are in that stage of life, and what they wish they would have done differently or what they do well. So it's just knowledge that we're trying to pass on. That's all. Not experience for us on that, but just some knowledge.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, that's what we're looking at then. So I hope that this challenged you in some way, regardless of what stage of life you're at. If you're a newly married couple, man, take that foundation and culture seriously. If you're in the growing family stage, we're with you. And we are trying to be creative and trying to constantly be redefining what romance looks like in our marriage, the same as we're challenging you to do. And if you are in that empty nest stage, man, I hope you are rekindling the romance continuously in your own marriage, not getting old and stodgy in your marriage, as well as leaving a legacy upon which others can be challenged in their dating relationship as well. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. We will be back with you next Monday with a brand new episode of the Marriage by Design podcast. Until then, pop over to our website, marriagebydesignpodcast.com, and check us out. Have a great week. And remember, God is for your marriage.
Thanks so much for listening. We just wanted to say, if you have a comment, a question, something that you're struggling with, or need prayer, please reach out to us. You can get a hold of us by emailing marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com, or of course you can comment on any of our social media and we will get back to you. But if you have something private, feel free to email us. We're happy to personally respond to you.
That's right. And we do respond to every comment that we receive, either through our website, through YouTube, through our social medias, which leads me to, feel free to pop over to our website, marriagebydesignpodcast.com. You can leave comments on any of our videos through that site. We would love to be able to connect with you, but please don't hesitate to reach out. Even if you just need prayer, you need someone to hear what you're going through, we're here for the Marriage by Design community, so feel free to reach out anytime. Until then, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.